Hi, everybody. I just want to talk to you about your responses to the free rate, the discussion posts that you left. And gosh, it was great. There was so many things to talk about that you wrote. I loved it. But I picked out a few. Um, and the first, I guess, was people's surprise maybe at how the special education movement really came out of the fight for civil rights. That's probably because I'm older that I knew that more so. But it is an interesting finding, and as one of you said, it makes total sense in the sense that we're bringing people into our society with equal rights. And I think as we discuss things like self determination, independence, etc., it's important to keep that civil rights model in mind because it really is about pushing for equal access and equal opportunity for the citizens that we work with. And in that case, it is good to look at all of our students as citizens, that they deserve basic civil rights. Also, some people talked about accountability, which one person was asking if maybe there was too much pressure in the field in making the field more difficult at best, and didn't like paperwork and things, which I don't either. And I think it's a good question. I don't know. I would say that yes, probably. I should probably know something about. I probably read something about this in the past, but nothing is coming to mind. I will tell you that the people that I work with in the fields now seem to have a really good dichotomy or like a framework of just this is the part of me that teaches and this is the part of me that has to do stuff that I don't really enjoy or oftentimes even think is necessary. And I've talked to them about it because they have some really incredibly long IEPs and things like that. And so I think it does put an onus on teachers that is really difficult. And the best way that I know to address it, and I think this is what I've learned from them, is that you keep your commitment and your passion for the students, you do what's right for them, and then you learn how to play the game of the accountability, red tape stuff. By play the game, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying cheat or something. I didn't mean it in a sinister way, but that you learn how paperwork is done efficiently and effectively. Um, I'm not arguing for already pre-done IEPs, for example. Okay, that's something that people you can get these programs and stuff. I don't mean cut through the red tape that way. They talk about it like they learn how to fill out forms, they learn how to be more efficient, they learn how to be more effective, they learn how to master that piece of their work in a way that's no longer as overwhelming as it was at one time. So that's kind of what I'm talking about is making certain that you keep it together for yourself in a way that you're able to master and feel comfortable with things that allows you to do what you really want to do. Some of them have been there a very long time, and they certainly recall when we didn't have this kind of paperwork and these sorts of things happening. Um, and they're not real big fans of it, but they love what they do, so they stay. One thing about accountability, though, I think is that in the past, if we had, I'm talking the profession collectively, if we had been more accountable, we probably wouldn't be where we are now. And that's part of the issue, is that there was too much time that lapsed in which schools pretty much um, were making decisions for families. For example, suggesting to them that there was only one placement that was really available. Okay, and we know that that's not correct with the L. Or I'll just use that example. Coming in and saying basically the place for your son is XYZ school, classroom 3, which is obviously a violation of the least restrictive environment. Okay, things like that happened so many times that parents, in seeking, a remedy, led to where we are now with a lot of lawsuits and a lot of legal mandates. My point is that if we do right by people, we don't have to worry about accountability. And that's one reason that I've said in I believe in a previous video to you in talking about families. If families know that you believe in their kid and you're doing everything you can for their kid, they'll cut you some slack. So you fill a form out wrong or something, they're not going to go after you. And that's one of the reasons I tell people, don't be so afraid of the law. Instead, take all that angst that you might have and put it into developing good relationships with the people around you, okay? Because people are very forgiving when something is not right. If they know that you're doing the right thing and trying as hard as you can, all right? So I just know that for first time people going in, it looks so just really overwhelming, and I understand that, but please don't let it bring you down too far. Have we gone too far, as someone suggested, that we've just been overloaded by the law? Um, I don't know. That's a good question. I read that and I was like, my initial reaction was, of course, we've been overloaded. Like, what are you, crazy? Um, and then I thought, well, the things that we've tended to have that we've been overloaded with are things that I agree with. So let's go with this. Um, yeah, I think we have a lot on our plate, and I think that we are probably overloaded, legally speaking, because, um, you know, oftentimes, I don't know if it's the best way, but oftentimes the way we make change or we remedy something is through legislation or through the courts or both. And yeah, we get a lot. We get a lot. I hope that we don't continue to see this coming down, but I hope it's because that we're doing the right thing by families. Um, the other thing is, in my experience, and this is just based on my age, and my mother is 83, and we talk about this as well. There really wasn't, for most of the years that I was teaching, this level of sort of top down stuff coming. So the other piece of that is that, hopefully maybe we're at a place where that cycle's going to stop. I hope. You know what I mean? Like we've been through a really long, probably couple of decades now of national, state, many organizations. Are going to use things like the EdTPA that you guys are familiar with. Those things have all sort of come down to us and been imposed. So I'm not taking a position, I'm just saying they've just been sort of imposed. Even in higher ed, that's occurring. So maybe we're going to get out of that pattern. Things do tend to go in cycles, and so maybe somewhat that's just where we've been. We'll see. But again, the main point, make yourself accountable, okay? Let's see. I wanted to say something about. Oh, I know what it was. I wanted to say something about, actually, a couple of things. There was an article that someone had about a student who couldn't attend his graduation. And there was, I'm not sure if it was an article or just somebody was commenting on a student who was fired at Wendy's or let go from a Wendy's because of his disability. Well, okay, I'm going to tie that into my little philosophical ending here. Because this gets back to literally how we feel about what we do and trying to put a lens on, as people who value um, people with disabilities fully, and that we want to completely be invested in advocating for who they are, etc. And so it was interesting that these two cases came up. The first one, the boy with that wasn't able to go to his graduation, I just don't know where to start. I just thought that whole thing was really odd. Um, but it sounded like it was a school wide thing, and so then I started going, well, if everybody's a part of it, then he needs to be a part of it. Like everybody knew the rule, even though I think it's stupid. And the article talked about restorative justice too, which is what the schools, what CPS wants schools to be going toward. And I couldn't agree more. If you don't know about restorative justice, um, read up on it. It's really, really important. But I couldn't understand if this was really about the student's disability or it wasn't about his disability. Okay, and then the same with the thing with autism at Wendy's. I'm sorry, that's how I have it written down. If you autism at Wendy's, I meant the person with autism who worked at Wendy's. And when I didn't read that. Well, let's start over. I read the article because someone posted it, but I didn't read it myself. I just happened to see a headline, and when it went by, my first thought was, I'll never eat at Wendy's again, right? So, anyway, having gone back and looked at that article and stuff, I started thinking, like, well, I wonder why the guy was bothering people. Why was he annoying? Like, why was he this kind of person or that kind of person that he didn't get there? Which led me then to start thinking about the idea that, well, wait a minute, how just because a person has autism, how tolerant are we expected to be of certain behaviors? Okay, so I mean, for example, let's say that this person has some, you know, from time to time screams things out or something, right? And it's profane or it's racist or whatever. Okay, and we know that it's not about racism, whatever. We know it's just how long do they get to stand in the middle of a Wendy's restaurant and do that before the restaurant can't handle it anymore, right? And like, how many times should that kid get in trouble? Because I think that was one of the questions that writer, the whoever you are out there who's writing about that student, how many times should he be able to get in trouble? Like, are we actually teaching something? Or are we not teaching something? Okay, so as you can see, I'm not answering the questions on purpose because I don't know enough information to answer. I mean, not that you asked me, but I meant I don't even have enough information to really give you an opinion. I can say that that kid at the school who didn't get to graduation, I can give an opinion. I just think that sounds like a ridiculously stupid program they have going to get to go to your graduation. But whether it was about his disability or not, I don't know. So here's why I'm saying it. At what point do people with disabilities get to be treated like the rest of us? I mean, for example, if I had a really loud mouth and I talk like this all the time, and I went into a place and I wanted to apply for a job as a receptionist, okay, and I'm talking like this in the interview, are they going to hire me or not? I know that sounds silly, but I'm serious. At what point are we disabling people, or maybe say re-disabling people, by saying, there's no consequences. You can do whatever you want. You can get in trouble 100 times, but you have ADHD, so you'll go to your graduation, or you can say racist things out loud or whatever, and it's okay. If people are offended and don't come back, it doesn't matter because you have autism. I'm pointing this out. I hope it doesn't sound too provocative, but I'm putting it out there because truly I think those are the questions that if you really want to advocate for and you really believe in full equal opportunity for people with disabilities in life, in the community life, we're going to have to confront things. Because when the environments are not as, what's the word I want, safe as they are in school. I mean, we can kind of mitigate a lot of things in a more controlled environment, but within the community, you can't. And so I thought it was interesting that these came up because they came up with the same, all this other stuff about the civil rights and how people, or I'm sorry, how this field came together and people move forward because of that kind of thing. And one of the reasons that the civil rights movement was difficult and continues to be are the stereotypes about people. The way we say all black people do this, or all brown people do that, or I don't know, Mexicans are such and such. We get into this idea, and then we work really hard to make certain that we're not basing things on stereotypes, prejudice, etc. Right? It's really, in my mind, very similar in special ed. Like maybe the person at Wendy's needed to be let go for whatever reason. He just happened to have autism. Maybe it was because of the autism. Is it wrong that it was because of the autism? If you're going to live an independent life, as we all do, all of those risks come with it. Not only that, sometimes in life we just get screwed over. You know what I mean? Sometimes we're better than the person that got hired and it doesn't matter. There's all sorts of things that in life that we have to learn are the risks of life, that we put ourselves out there, we hope for the best, but we don't always have an outcome that we like. Um, and I think when we get that kind of engagement, I'm talking now particularly with adults with disabilities, when we get that kind of engagement, these are the questions that we have to look for. When to advocate, where to advocate. I learned that best, I think, when I did adult job placement. I placed adults with disabilities in jobs. And I had to learn to really figure out, okay, is this employer upset because blah, 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 or is it because blah, blah, blah? Like, because there were times where I felt like I really had to take a stand for my client and say, he needs more training, he needs more da da da. There were other times that I had to say, no, 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 this isn't going to work out. And even though these were adults, I oftentimes had parents or other caregivers who were pushing me to keep somebody in a job that I knew wasn't going to really work out. And I wasn't always really popular, but I had to exercise this kind of thinking that I'm talking. Is this because of the disability? Is this not? Does this kid really can try harder? He just isn't doing it, or is this really over his head? And he can't. So trying to make all of that work out with a person who this is their income and what they rely on, it was a little dicey from time to time, but it does help you exercise that kind of thinking, which is really important. I was going to tell you last, I guess, that one of the things that somebody brought up about Misericordia, and this is about the history and that thing. The first internship I ever did, it was more like no, I guess it was like an internship. It was like a first year pre-student teaching internship. Anyway, the first one I ever did was in a state institution in Illinois called the Lincoln Development Center, or Developmental Center. And it was an institution, and it was so perfectly horrible that it's hard for me to describe. It really is. When I think that would have been 1981, probably 1981. And I know to you that sounds like 100 years ago, but really, we were in the 1980s in America, and what I walked into was absolutely, it was so horrific. I can't even describe it. I was overwhelmed. Um, Much like what was stated in the post about sitting around or whatever in this non-air conditioned room, people were sitting around. Well, I'll just say this because you're special educators and we do this work. When I first walked in, the first thing I did is I walked in and I saw a man eating his feces. That was my first entrance to the door. I just walked in and I did not know what to do. The yelling, the screaming, head banging, I'm tearing up. It was so horrible. It really was so horrible that I just couldn't imagine that this was going on in the United States. I just could not imagine it. So, it's really been a long, long journey for me to see the way things have changed from that kind of environment to all students have the right to be considered included in typical environments. It's really quite It's really quite a long journey. Um, Going back to what I said and what the student asked about, are we overloaded? You know, you look at that and say maybe not, maybe that's what we needed the whole way. I don't know, but it's going to be your I hope mission to keep the field going because of best practice and to keep the field going because of our best philosophies that we hold about people with disabilities. I know someone said to me one time, and I thought it was really important, that we were talking about civil rights and the rights of people with disabilities and all this thing. And she said the only thing people have is of you is their impression. And she said, so it's how you talk, it's how you act, it's how you interact that people will look at and will decide. And I took that to heart about people with disabilities, so that in every opportunity I have, every opportunity I have when I'm working with people with disabilities in schools, wherever, that all I do is talk and act and interact, etc., in a way that demonstrates my affection for this person, my belief in this person, the fact that their humanity overrides anything else about what you might see, those sorts of things. When we take that to heart, when we bring families together with us to work on those things in a journey, I promise you can have a very successful experience in special education, despite all of that paperwork and things that we have to do, which I know gets really, really overwhelming. Anyway, great read. Thank you so much. I'll be back very soon with some other comments on your discussion groups. Thanks.